It's 1 Corinthians 16, and this is just a little bit of a background that's going to help us in the second part. So Paul is the one who's writing. He's the Apostle Paul, and he is writing to the church at Corinth. And in chapter 16, verse 5, he says, here's my plans, okay? Here's my itinerary, so to speak. He says, I will come to you when I pass through Macedonia, for I am passing through Macedonia, and it may be that I will remain or even spend the winter with you, that you may send me on my journey wherever I go. For I do not wish to see you now on the way, but I hope to stay a while with you if the Lord permits. Verse 8, but I will tarry in Ephesus until Pentecost, for a great and effective door has opened to me, and there are many adversaries. All right? So let me push pause there. So if you get a map out, you'll be able to see you've got Greece or Macedonia is right here, and he is up here. Corinth is down here. He's writing to them, and he says, I'd like to find my way down there, but there's something that I need to do first. You see in verse 8, he says, there's a door that has been opened to me in Ephesus, okay? And so I'm going to go to Ephesus first. So if you got your map, it'll go this way, or, yeah, that way. You'll go down, and then you'll cut back across so that he can get to Corinth. Okay, does that make sense? So I want to get down there, but there's a little stop in Ephesus. It looks like there's a door that's been opened, an opportunity to minister over there. And so I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to hit Corinth. All right? But little snag in the plans that Paul made. And if you get to read Acts 19, so write that down. You can find this a little bit later. Acts 19 tells us the story of what happened when Paul took his little stop in Ephesus, okay? So when he's coming down, he goes, I'm going to go to, and then he's expecting that there's going to be a problem, because he says in verse 8, and or in verse 9, there are many adversaries. So he knows that when he goes to Ephesus, even though there's a door that's open to him to be able to minister, he knows that it's going to not be easy. He knows that the enemy is going to be there waiting for him. He knows that this is not going to be like your Sunday school, hopefully, and everything's great. And he was right. Okay, because when you get to read Acts chapter 19, you find out that Paul is preaching, and there's this guy whose name is Demetrius. Don't name your son Demetrius. Demetrius, and he is an idol maker. He makes idols to Diana. And when Paul is preaching, people are coming to know the Lord, right? And if people are coming to know the Lord, do you know what that means for Demetrius? Less sales. All right. So Demetrius is looking at Paul, and he probably cares nothing about the message. He doesn't care what Paul's doing, but he does know this, that if more people go to Paul, then that means less people come to him looking for idols, which means less cash in his pocket, And so Demetrius goes out, and he goes, well, I got to stop this. I don't know how, but I'm going to figure it out. And so he goes out, and he begins to tell people, hey, Ephesus has always been about the goddess Diana, And in fact, he does such a great job that a riot is started in Ephesus, okay? I mean, hours of people chanting, great is Diana of Ephesus. I mean, it's just all out chaos breaks out. Okay? And it's so bad that Paul and his friends, they almost are killed in this riot, okay? They are able to escape, though. And so, turn to 2 Corinthians. You just got to turn the page. How about that? I made this so easy for you. I didn't make your Bible last night. But now I want you to see, now this is 2 Corinthians. Now he's already gone through Ephesus. He is now writing to Corinth from Achaia, which is just a little bit north of Corinth. But this is what he says in verse 8, okay? For we do not want you to be ignorant, brethren, of our trouble which came to us in Asia, okay? Ephesus is in Asia, okay? That we were burdened beyond measure, above strength, so that we despaired even of life. Yes, we have the sentence of death in ourselves. So just pause right there. I decided I decided to look up some of those words. Hey, you guys, look at this. I got notes today, all right? Y'all are like, we're going to have revival. I got some notes today. And I looked up in verse 4, it says tribulation. So I looked up that word, and it means that there was such a distress that not only was it outward, but it was inward. Like, there was trouble so much on the outside that it was affecting his inner being, okay? Like his emotions, like he was physically scared for his life and the future. And so what I want to say is that tribulation that Paul is talking about is not the same kind of tribulation that you have whenever you have a flat tire and you can't get that stupid bolt off, and then it starts to rain. Then it starts to rain, and then it starts to get dark, and you forgot your flashlight, and then your phone dies. That's horrible. That's like tribulation on its own. And so what I'm trying to say is that's probably not how you would describe tribulation of the same kind that Paul is going through in this moment. He is in a riot. There are thousands of people who want him dead, and he is trying to figure out a way to get out. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about tribulation that he's trying to talk about. And so then I looked up another word, and the word is in verse 8. It's the word trouble. And what that word means is, the original of it is that he felt like somebody was hunting him down. He felt, it was like, you ever have that feeling when you're walking out, maybe it's late at night or you're trying to get to your car or something like that, and you feel like you got to just, there's somebody watching you, and you got your head and you're on a swivel there and you're looking behind you because it just feels like something's going on. Well, Paul said that when he was over there, it felt like he was being hunted. I watch these videos of animals that hunt other animals. You ever do that every now and then? Okay, never mind, it's just me. But there was this one, and there's a leopard. He's up in a tree, and there is one of those not a groundhog. It was, what was the guy in Warthog? Thank you. Warthog. He was in a hole. And the patience of this leopard was amazing, okay? Because he's waiting in this tree, and he's waiting for the warthog to come out because he saw him go in there. And he comes out, and the warthog is looking around because he's like, I don't see anything. And he comes out, and the leopard jumps down from the tree and gets him. It's really a thing of beauty. If you like leopards. If you like warthogs, probably not so much. But that's the picture that Paul is trying to give. He said, I felt like I was looking around constantly over my shoulder because it felt like I was being hunted. All right? And then he says in verse 8, he says there was exceedingly burdened. Okay? Now, burden you probably get, it's just this weight that he has. It's probably the weight that he would have for his friends that were almost dead, the weight that he would have from the church that is at Ephesus that he got to be a part of and start. But the word exceedingly is the same word that we get the word hyperbole from, okay? So what Paul is saying is that I had an exceeding burden, which means he goes, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. The burden that I have on me, I can't even fully put it into words. This weight that is on my shoulders. It is exceedingly, it's over, it's more than, and if I told you, you would go, no, that's not true. But Paul's like, I'm telling you, there's this burden that's been on me. And then he says, so much that I despaired of life, okay? And that phrase means that there was no way I could personally survive this particular instance. There was no exit sign. There was no way out, okay? So here you go. You've got Paul in this writing. He's explaining what's going on here. He has gone through tribulation. He feels like he is somebody who's being hunted. He has an exceeding weight on his shoulders, and now he is living in such a way that he doesn't see a way out physically to be able to survive. That is the pressure that Paul was under. on a regular basis. Every single town that he went to, he was being thrown in jail one more time. Every single time, he is either being beaten with rods, stoned in one place, thrown in prison every place that he goes to. He is just constantly under this amazing, exceeding burden everywhere that he goes. Paul, listen to this. This is a true story. He went to a city called, I think it was Lystra, and they hated him so much that they took him outside of the city and they stoned him, okay, with rocks. Do you get that? They thought he was dead. The stones were still on top of Paul, and they're going back to their house because they thought, we've done our job. We've stoned a few people in the past, and we know how to do this. And that night, evidently, after they've all gone home, Paul pushes the rocks off of him, okay? Do you know what he does? You would think he'd do this, because I'm going to tell you, if I get stoned, I'm going to take a day off, maybe a week. I'm going to rethink life choices. I'm going to be like, are you sure this pastor thing is for me? I mean, I'm going to take a look at this, If I get stoned, I promise you, that's what I'm going to do. But Paul, do you know what he does? Paul pushes the rocks off of him, and he says, I got one more city that I want to hit, and I got to preach over there. Like, what? Paul, you were just stoned. Hey, you know what? Hey, if you take a day, there ain't nobody who's going to say you shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? There's nobody who's going to fault you. There's nobody who's going to say, it's okay, Paul, to take a day off. No. It says immediately he went to the next city. Now, you got to go. You got to think about this. What in the world is it that drives somebody so into his missionary journey and the ministry that God has given to him and this amazing gospel message? What is it, okay, that drives him to do that, okay? Because I'm going to tell you, that's next level, isn't it? That's that exceeding burden, hunted like the leopard, tribulation on every side. And yet, he goes from city to city with undiminished enthusiasm. You know what I mean? Then very next city, he knows one of four things going to happen. I'm going to get beaten, thrown in jail, stoned, or something, So, what was it that did it? He says, verse 9, yes, we have the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves. But, you ready? In God who raises the dead, who delivered us from so great a death and does deliver us, in whom we trust that he will still deliver us. All right, so here's the thing that kept on driving Paul, and this is such a great little thing. And in our world and in our culture today, we are driven by what we feel. Have you noticed that? If you try to say that somebody's feelings are not correct or untrue, then you get offended. And if you're offensive to other people, then you ultimately get canceled. And if you get canceled, then that means you're either a racist, misogynist, or some other thing, right? And so our world is completely driven with those kind of attitudes and thoughts. And so you don't really want to hurt other people's feelings, because if you do that, then you're a horrible person, right? But here's the thing about feelings is that feelings go up and down. Feelings go left and right. You may feel one thing one day and you don't the next day. Feelings, if you are using feelings to drive you in your ministry, if you're using feelings to drive you in anything, here's the thing. You ready? And it's good to know this on the front end. You will quit. If Paul decided that he was going to run his ministry off of the way that he felt as he is pushing a rock off of himself, Paul would have quit. No doubt about it. And everybody in here would have said, that's probably a good idea, Paul. You're going to die if you keep doing this. And Paul goes, but I don't run my life and I don't run ministry off of my feeling. I'm not going to let popular opinion tell me that I'm doing this well or not. I'm not going to let any of those things move me. I am fixed on one mission, one message, the gospel of Jesus, that he died for my sin, that he paid the penalty, and that he rose again so that I could have life and hope and peace and a restored relationship with God. You know, he says, that is the thing that moves me. And here's the thing. When you are living in a world where feelings are what gets you up in the morning and what feelings are how it drives you, you will quit and you are going to be the most frustrated human being ever on the planet, okay? Here's the question that you ought to ask yourself every single time you either want to quit or give up or complain or any of those things. Okay, you ready? It's just one simple question. I'm glad you're seated. You ready? Is Jesus risen from the dead? That's the question I want you to ask. No other question. Is Jesus risen from the dead? You know, we get to places even in that we are destitute of life, where we look at life and the circumstances of this life have us with an abundant burden, an exceeding burden. Maybe you feel that way. You know, maybe you would feel like, Phil, if I tried to even tell you about the burden that I have in my heart and in our family, you wouldn't even believe it. I want to let you know this, Phil. Listen, there are times in my life where I feel like exactly the way that Paul describes. He goes, we had the sentence of death in ourselves. We saw no way out. We didn't see an exit sign. Are you with me? We felt like this is the end of my story. I can't go on one more step. Have you ever been there? I know we know people who have been there. They didn't see an end. They didn't see what there was going to be any hope at the end of the tunnel. And many of them took their own lives because they didn't see that. But this is the question that I want you to ask, that Paul goes, okay, when you get into those places, is Jesus resurrected from the dead? Because if he is, okay, then there is hope for tomorrow. Because he lives, right? I can face tomorrow because he lives. All fear is gone because I know he holds the future. Life is worth living because I know he lives. And that's what Paul was like. You wouldn't believe the pressure that's been on me. You wouldn't believe the riot that I just went through. You wouldn't believe the stoning that I just endured. You wouldn't believe 3 different times, beaten with rods. But I keep on going. I don't ever stop. I don't let people tell me and discourage me and get me to quit. Why? Because Jesus is alive. And I keep on moving forward because he is the prize. He is the reason why I go forward. He's the reason why I will preach the gospel with as much clarity and power tomorrow as I did yesterday, because he's alive. And today, this is why we are in such an incredibly different world than we've ever been in before, is because so many people depend on their feelings to get them through a day. And they think that popularity is going to get them through their day. How many likes they get on Facebook is going to get them through another day. How much money is in their bank is going to get them through the day. If any of those are the questions that you ask, you will fail, you will quit, and you will be in a place where you feel like there is no end, there is no exit sign. But when you start asking this question, is Jesus alive? Well, guess what? Amen. He is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. More than 500 people actually saw him alive. Over 500 people saw him do a Superman into the air. And yes, I said Superman. 500 people died for what they believed they saw when they saw Jesus alive and risen and going up into heaven. He is alive. And if that is true, it changes everything.